the food editor at the San Francisco Standard. And we're here to do a Q&A with Ryan Cole from High Neighbor Restaurant Group and Laurence Jossel from Nopa. Laurence is a chef. Sorry, I can hear myself. Let me mute this. Hold on. Muting. Okay, cool. That was unnerving. We're here to talk about an article that I wrote for a big food package that we dropped on Monday. I was saying I like to say the word dropped because it makes me feel like Beyonce. We are talking about fine dining in San Francisco, but how it's related to what could be a slowdown of openings of what I would say is the mid-level restaurant. And I had, in putting together this big food package that came out on Monday, the anchor story was the one that I wrote, and I started it a while ago, and it started maybe 2 years ago in my head when I was talking to Craig Stoll of Delfina, and he had just reopened Delfina's with its new remodel, and he kind of came out of the kitchen looking a little peaked and overwhelmed and proud, all the things, all the emotions one has when they open a restaurant. And he was just like, I don't know if this is sustainable. And I was like, what are you talking about? You just opened this beautiful new space. It looks great. And he's just like, this model, this model that Delfina was built on, like, I don't know if it can work anymore. And he meant financially and probably emotionally. So that got me thinking, and I started talking to Craig about that. And that all kind of dovetailed with taking the job at the Standard. So I started here in May to build the food section and brought on Lauren Saria, and we've been working hard. And like constantly I'm like, okay, we've got to go to another restaurant. We've got to check out what's next, what's new. And inevitably, quite often it's a fine dining restaurant, or at the least a sort of elevated restaurant. So I have to switch between my glasses like an old lady. I started talking to people like you, Ryan, and people like you, Laurence, who run very different styles of restaurants, and realizing that there might be a connection between what's happening with mid-level restaurants. And when I say mid-level, I'm talking like Delfina, Nopa. What are you, 17 years at Nopa? Is that right?
We'll be 19.
19?
Yeah, 19
Jesus.
in a few months.
Wow, that is crazy. And you defined a neighborhood. Let's just, to all the youngins out there, like Nopa was never called Nopa till Nopa opened. Like Nopa was, the Western edition?
And it still is, in my opinion, the Western edition.
Okay, well, but you're old school. Now it's just Nopa. Now it's just named after your restaurant. But, when I was coming of age as a food writer, like Nopa, Delfina, level of dining, Francis, go a little further, like Statebird Provisions, Liho Yacht Club, like these styles of restaurants, kind of what I call elevated mid-level. They're not neighborhood restaurants, but they are restaurants that are very considered, often making everything from scratch, really well done, but not fine dining, not formal at all. And then the number of restaurants that have opened that are what I would call more formal has really changed the landscape. So San Francisco has seen, at my count, because I spent a lot of time going through every single opening notification, every single Michelin star, and at my count, there's been about 20 fine dining restaurants that have opened since 2019.
That's a lot.
And even most since 2021. And 2020, we're talking like pandemic times when people are just crawling out of the darkness and we're blinking into the light, and everything's really expensive. Labor is really expensive. Food costs really expensive. And yet, fine dining. And I just couldn't wrap my head. I'm like, why is this happening? So I talked to Ryan and I talked to you. And then I talked to a bunch of other chefs, all the way from Corey Lee at Benu, who's old school. He claims that he and Daniel Patterson at Qua were the first tasting menus really to hit San Francisco. And then Kiln, I spoke to the chef there, John, and I spoke to the chef at the Wild, and then I spoke to Craig Stoll, Delfina, and the Riches from Rich Table, and kind of gathered all this information and wrote my article. And it was really interesting to me, and I wanted you guys to talk more about it because you were both like so well spoken and had lots of good ideas. So let's start with what is fine dining. And Ryan, you actually have a pat answer. You have a ready, like a boilerplate answer.
I don't know. I don't know if I have a boilerplate answer. Honestly, when our first restaurant we opened almost 11 years ago with Stone's Throw on our own, and Nopa was a huge influence, right? That's where everybody went when I moved to San Francisco back in 2010. And correct me if I'm wrong, Laurence, you've been around a little bit longer in the industry here. I think everybody, this was around Statebird, Rich Table's opening, we opened Stone's Throw. Everybody kind of was fine dining pedigree trained and was tired of working fine dining. So when I left Michael Mina to do my own thing in Stone's Throw, we were like, we want to take the same hospitality, which is free, right? Hospitality costs you nothing, and the same technique, right? Like I always said when we opened Stone's Throw, there's a right and wrong way to cook a duck breast, right? But it doesn't cost you much more to cook it properly. You just have to have been trained to do it. So how do you take that experience and put it into a restaurant that is in this mid-tier price point? You don't have to wear a suit to work anymore, right? People can come as they go. It can become this neighborhood. And for us, Nopa was a big founding. Like, we're like, how are they so busy from open to close with the food that's what you want to eat without feeling uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say, will you talk a little bit more about the restaurants? Because I just said, hi neighbor group. Oh. 7 Adams.
Sure. So 7 Adams is our newest venture. So we got a Michelin star there. We just won Esquire's Best New Restaurants in America there. Right. We won Rob Report's Best New Restaurants in America. We've been very, very fortunate at that restaurant. But we also have and that's, I guess you would say, fine dining, right? We look at it more like it's $87 for, yes, it is a set menu with choices, but our version of fine dining is only 6 seats within the restaurant, right? That's our chef's counter. Oh, okay. So the rest of the restaurant for $87, if I got an app and an entree at Nopa, I'm probably coming close to that.
We have like a 74.
70. Yeah, right. So we're not much more than that. But it definitely feels, to your point, more special occasion.
And it's a set menu too, so you don't have a choice
you do have,
what you're going to eat.
You have choices on certain courses, which was intentional to have some with no choice and some with choice to kind of make it less formal.
Yeah.
But our other restaurants, Trestle, which is hitting its 10-year anniversary in a few months, we were the starters of affordable prefix. We opened that restaurant for $35, 3 courses.
Yeah, that's cool.
Packed every day, because it's like that's the cost of an entree.
Right. But explain a little bit about, the Chronicle, Mackenzie just wrote a story, curse her, right before my story came out. I just want, Mackenzie, I want you to know I wrote this before you wrote yours. But we were sitting on it, and you're one of the best writers in the city, and so I was very sad to see that she came out with her prefix story. But obviously, it means it's on people's minds, like this sort of proliferation of prefix menus. And explain to me, maybe both of you, from your own perspective, what does the prefix do? I think this is what I want to get at, is I think a lot of diners, understandably, you're not supposed to be thinking about the business end or the business model of a restaurant when you go have dinner. You're supposed to just enjoy yourself. But I think it's really interesting to see the reasons why things have developed. And I think set menus, chef's menus, prefix, whatever you want to call them, are the answer to something economic. And so maybe Ryan and you guys could both kind of talk to that.
Well, obviously from the kitchen standpoint, prefix, you have a set amount of things you're going to purchase and prep. And so it's a streamline of efficiency.
Yeah.
And everything is expected. You're not going to have tons of extra stuff to work through.
You mean from the kitchen's perspective?
From the kitchen's perspective. So obviously there's an economic savings, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. But I've also, in my beginning, have worked in a lot of places that, when I first started in San Francisco, my first amazing experience was working with Gary Danko at the Ritz-Carlton.
What year was that?
Oh my God.
1962?
1776. It was in the 90s, 92 maybe, 93, something like that.
Sense.
And what they did is they had this, I thought it was very cutting edge, and it was cutting edge at the time, is they had a separate menu for the prefix stuff and then something else for the a la carte. So you could choose from the a la carte what you'd like to prefix, and they kind of wrote it back and forth. So they did both.
I think some restaurants here have tried that. I think it's pretty hard to execute.
It was
pretty
Kiln
hard, tried to do that, I think, and then
maybe
Sorrel maybe for a little bit, and then they just went full set menu.
I think when you go into the prefix world, right, the expectation I have as the from the business side is I'm providing our guests a better experience, right? Because I know that the kitchen only has to focus on 8 dishes, not 20 dishes, right? Running an a la carte restaurant to have a menu that catches everyone's hard. And so if the kitchen only has to focus on 8, I would expect the quality level of those 8 to be consistent, which I think is one of the biggest challenges a restaurant ever faces. Can you uphold consistency? And it should be even better because you're only focusing on 8 things, right? Which leads to efficiency, which leads to more profitability. And so I would have a higher expectation, even if it's a cheap prefix, it should still be better in theory.
Yeah, well, because you're controlling the quality, but also you're controlling food costs. So is it like, I mean, my understanding is you're predicting your food costs too. You're predicting your labor, like if you have a set menu, technically, I mean, I think, Laurence, would be interesting. I want to hear more about like how much of a Wild West is it to put together the puzzle of a restaurant that's a la carte, where you don't know who's going to order what, you don't know what your waste is going to be like. You don't I don't think people understand the dance that you do on a daily basis running an a la carte menu driven restaurant, because that's what everyone does. And all of a sudden, with a lot of set menus, I'm like, oh, this is a model that may work better in a time when things are a little rife, to say the least. So explain a day
it is
at
exactly
Nopa.
that. It is
you
exactly
gave
that.
me a great description when I chatted with you. You were just like, if I had known 19 years ago that I'd be, making burger buns and my own pasta and grounding the only, that's a terrible idea. Whose idea was that?
It's a really bad idea. So
But
all
it's
you
what
out there
we
are
love
considering
Nopa
it,
for,
don't
you
do
know?
it. I love it too.
Yeah, but
and
explain,
it makes sense.
paint a day. I want to hear a day at Nopa.
So a day at Nopa starts at 6 in the morning.
Okay.
And 6 in the morning, we have 3 fine young men who open the door and hopefully don't set off the alarm, because hopefully I'm still sleeping. And they hit the kitchen and they start cleaning. We don't have an outside janitorial team. We want to do it in-house. We want to do it right. At 7 o'clock, we have the next layer, which are 6 prep, including a butcher, that come in, and a sous chef that comes in, and they start to take the day apart. There's a prep list written from the night before, the PM sous, of what's expected, and there's a new menu. Not only do we do this silly a la carte thing, but we change the menu every day. So,
Every day.
Every day.
Which was, I will say, what we all came to expect. I came to expect that from a restaurant here of your caliber. Of
Well,
Nopa's
we have
caliber.
to. So what we do is we know what's, we have a protein schedule. So we know that we're getting, like today, right after this, I'm going to go butcher 2 lamb. And on Friday, we're going to do things with the legs. On Saturday, we're going to do things with the ribs. On Sunday, we're going to do something with the braise. And then the following week after that, we do a whole pig. So we just have this natural rotation with ducks and pigs and lamb and et cetera, that go onto our menu. But I think it keeps the cooks interested. It certainly keeps the neighborhood interested, keeps our guests interested, and the servers. And we have to taste everything every day. So we put up every single dish every single day. But going backwards, at 8 o'clock in the morning, our pastry team arrives, and that's 2 assistants plus a pastry chef.
And you're paying what per hour? What's minimum wage right now? Just remind people what they voted in.
Just under $19.
1867.
Yeah.
And then we work through, then we put up our first family meal of the day. We put up 3 different family meals. We have 85 employees working in that restaurant who we have to feed. So we put one at 11, we put one at 4, and we put one at the very end of the night. So people are well fed. That is one of the benefits of having excess stuff every once in a while, because we know we're going to feed people with it. At 3 o'clock, most of the prep is hopefully done and tucked away as our PM line cooks come in, and so does the staff. So we have, to run the kitchen at night, we have to have 8 of us, including an expediter and who's ever manning the pass, we call it, doing, and then we have our bussers, our runners, our polishers, our bar back, our hosts, our managers, our bartenders, and our servers come in.
Yeah.
It's an army.
It's a lot.
And a lot of times at about 3:45, 4 o'clock, I look around and I just see cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And a glass breaks and I think, oh my God, we haven't made $1 yet, and now we're in the hole already. So financially, it's not a superb model.
It's on a...
Not a superb model.
Oh.
When we opened in 2006, our goal was to have all appetizers $10 or less, all entrees $20 or less. And I look at the menu now and oh my God, it's gone up, it's gone up, it's gone up, it's gone up. But still our food cost is exactly at 30%.
Yeah.
Which for some is a high.
It's
high.
In industry standard right now, that's high.
Yeah.
What is the industry standard, you would say?
26, something
Yeah.
like that.
I think if you're an Italian restaurant, 24, 25.
Because you're selling flour.
Right.
Oh, I was
and
like,
if you're any other restaurant, you're running 27s to depending on how high you market the price up to 30. 30 is like steakhouses, meat forward concepts. 30,
And we
31.
are. We're a pork chop, burger, steak on the grill kind of place.
Yeah.
And
but I mean, explain it, according to multiple people I spoke to, the 2000s, this was a model that was acceptable, workable, doable. I mean,
because you saw a bottom line.
Yeah.
know?
But why? I mean, what has changed? I know.
You know what's changed?
but
The food
tell
cost
me.
the food cost is still the same, and
Yeah.
we've adjusted pricing
Is the
accordingly.
food cost the same?
I got a letter today, just this morning, from our bread company. And so we work with we make bread, which is probably more expensive. We get bread from down the street, a place, Josie Baker, who like rolls a cart of bread down to us every day, which is wonderful. And then we use another East Bay supplier, who's fantastic, and we've worked with I've worked with them for 30 years in San Francisco. And today I got an email from the founder, Steve, saying, bread price is going up 4.8% starting in January, and these are the reasons why.
What were the reasons?
And the reasons are flour, although had a little bit of a drop this year, is still like 40% more than they were paying for it 3 years ago.
That's
Right?
a lot. That's 40% is not small.
Walnuts, they have a walnut surcharge on their bread now because walnuts have gone up 50%. But it's legit,
Yeah.
Everybody's explaining why everything's so expensive. Insurance was brought up because insurance now is 8% higher.
8.
8. And 10% in
It
other
is
arenas.
exponentially more than 8%.
Well, just
higher.
this year.
Just this year over year, at most of my clients, insurance is up like 20%. It is
maybe we got a good deal.
insane.
It is insane.
Regardless, it is
So
insane.
bottom line has shrunk,
Yeah.
and basically, and I
Throw
kind of
utilities into it. That's up another almost
Yeah.
15 to 20%.
I joke that we run a nonprofit, which sounds great, but it's not great.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to do it, honestly. I actually am. But I don't want to lose.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
you
I
don't
want
wanna
everybody
close.
around to make a living in the restaurant.
Yeah.
And I want to not be in a hole.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
But the idea of when I first started in San Francisco in 1991, cooking, I was working in restaurants that were 18, 20% EBITDA, doing, the health was amazing. This was a good investment in a restaurant. And now it's a great way to lose some dough.
Yeah.
Nopa specifically has been very lucky because we are, again, almost 19 years old, and we are a special occasion restaurant for a lot of people, and we put a lot of candles in desserts every single day. But also we have people that, oh my God, we had our first date here, and these are our 3 children, and it's that kind of special place for a lot of folks. So it's almost a labor of love.
Yeah.
In that regard, is you're taking care of a neighborhood, and we saw the benefit of that during the pandemic, where people just couldn't get enough of us. It was kind of amazing how grateful people were for that little bit of normalcy. And we never closed. We just never closed. We always had some smoke coming out of that chimney every day. And when we reopened, I'm just shocked, a little bit shocked, but like Craig, who I respect very much, kind of looks into the future and sees this type of restaurant as a bit of a dinosaur.
Yeah. This story came from me feeling sad about that because I want these kinds of restaurants to be what San Francisco is defined by. I've never thought of it as defined by either counter service. I always think of that as being LA. Like LA people will wait in line for counter, no sweat. They don't think twice about it. It's becoming a model here that obviously chefs are leaning into either counter or higher level. And Ryan, I wanted you to talk similarly about the difference. I want to see the difference between what what Laurence is doing, I mean, the interesting thing about Seven Adams is, after you and I spoke, is that it seems like Seven Adams might be a model that is working. And
it's working.
That is working. Or maybe Gangbusters working, actually. And that's interesting to me because I don't think it's the style of restaurant that would have flown in San Francisco culturally not too long ago. But I think things have shifted. And I want to just hear, like, what's the difference? So if Laurence has 85 employees and is making their own bread and all these things, and how many items are on your menu?
We do 11 or 12 appetizers. So it's around the 20, 22, not including, after dinner.
Yeah, so a
And
lot of labor.
He's got a pastry team. Nobody has a pastry team anymore.
Yeah,
You're
true.
lucky if you have one,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, so now Seven Adams opened last year, November, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, congratulations again.
Thanks.
It's a really big deal. And you have Serena and David Fisher at the helm. I
Who are
don't want
awesome.
to ignore them as we speak to you.
They're awesome.
But talk to me a little bit about what's a day at Seven Adams versus in some comparison.
I mean, well, you could fit probably 5 Seven Adams inside the footprint of one Nopa.
Yeah.
Right? Physically, we are
What's
only
the
40.
square footage?
It's 1,500 square feet.
And yours is
4,000.
And the only reason we make that 1,500 square feet work is because we also rent an apartment upstairs, which is our offices, storage, everything. We have an alley of storage. When we came into that restaurant, we said we need every inch of square footage for seating. We took everything out of it except for seating and pushed it somewhere else to make it function. Our days over there, the first person comes in at 8. We have one prep cook. It comes in at 8. Chefs usually arrive and we have one steward. We also do the same thing. We have people who stay at night and clean. Then we have somebody who comes in and just porters all day cleaning everything to avoid the cleaning company expense, because that's a huge expense.
Yeah.
We have our chefs come in around 11. Cooks are all there by 12. And we would have on any given day 5 cooks, 1 pastry cook. So we're not huge. But the same thing, everything is made from scratch. All of our bread is made from scratch. Every dish, everything is made. And that's even to the point of, like, they really pride themselves in making koji and making fermentations that could be months-long processes to be able to serve down the road, right? It's by no means a planning of whole animals, right? We don't have the facilities to be able to do that, but it's the same concept and idea of a lot of planning. Our front of house comes in at 3 o'clock, give or take. Our managers are there during the day, 1 o'clock, and we're dinner only, and we're only open from 5:30 on the weekdays till 9 o'clock. I think the huge difference we have, there's a couple of huge differences, is we don't do any tips, right? So when you don't do any tips, you pay everybody high wages. So our servers can make anywhere from $57 to $65 an hour.
when you say you don't do any tips, you mean tips are included in the...
It's included, right. So, and a lot of people hate this, right? A lot of guests are like, why are you putting an extra surcharge? And I'm like, you would go to his restaurant and tip 20%. I'm just taking away your tip line and saying, don't do the math and sign for it. So I can control how to give them, like how many servers do you know that make $65 an hour for setup, breakdown, working, 2 weeks of paid vacation at $65 an hour, 80 hours of sick time at $65 an hour. It's a lot of money.
Sounds about. Did you bring applications?
It's a lot of money, right? So if you're a good server, like you're making a lot of money. And so I think that is a huge expense difference from us. It's a different model, but it works. But I kind of always believed it's how you occupy your square footage, right? So the one thing for me outside looking in about Nopa is you're full with the line out the door at 6 o'clock. You know your reservations are full all night. You have walk-in wait list, and you're full at midnight. When back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I was
back in the day.
say, not anymore.
Back
We're
in the day,
talking about
right?
late night dining
Pre-COVID.
next, yeah.
Right? So if you're maximizing your occupancy, it's the same way as we maximize our occupancy. Every single table has to be sat twice. On a weekend, most of them get sat 3 times. We can't have an open table. The model works if you are always full.
Yeah.
And I don't think it actually depends on a prefix or an a la carte if you're full.
But he's exactly right. That's exactly it. So
That you must have been just, I mean, when you pre-COVID, different times, different hours, different things, but you were always full.
always full and paying a ton of overtime because of that model of being
But-
open late night.
Did you care? You're conscious of it,
Yeah.
but it was worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd do it again.
It's stressful, long hours.
You know what it is? It's a lot of burnout as well. So you burn people out. It's not a natural work-life balance,
Right.
which I think is much more important to people now than when I started. I don't think we even had the word balance invented yet.
There was no word.
There's no
life.
word for
Polite,
that. That's a new word, right? Yeah, so I don't know if I go back to that at all. But to your point about being full, that solves all problems.
That is the name of the game, and I think that's what inherently the San Francisco problem is. Unlike a New York, right? The population of San Francisco is what, 750,000 right now? It's actually gone down, right? Of actual residents in San Francisco, not taking the Bay Area.
Yeah.
The amount of hotel rooms in San Francisco, though, allows you to influx by millions in the city for huge events, Super Bowls, Salesforce, Dreamforce, right? When the hotels are running at 60 to 50% occupancy, your population in the city is not enough to support the amount of restaurants that were here pre-COVID when you were hitting this populous level. In New York, the population's not changed, the activity hasn't changed, so it can support these restaurants.
Right.
So now we're fighting for guests. And so to get a restaurant full every day, you have to make a decision: location, number of seats,
Yeah.
concept and price point, because your entire goal is maximize occupancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's success.
It is a trip to drive around, not like a drive around the United States, to be in different cities in the United States and go into restaurants, and they're not always full. And you know, or at least you assume, or I assume, that it's okay. Like, it's so much more affordable to run a restaurant in many other cities. This is the thing that boggles my mind, and this is a story I wanted to write, actually, that I have not written, but I can ask you about it. If you travel around the United States, I was in New Orleans in the fall, and I went to a restaurant that was like kind of a 7 Adams level, like high-end but casual. They had a $70 duck neck sausage on the menu, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, seriously? Like, who pays for this? But in New Orleans is so much cheaper than San Francisco. I'm not saying it's an inexpensive town, but to run a business in New Orleans, you're not paying the HOA. Like, there's so many things that they're not paying, yet their prices are almost very similar to ours. I was in Cincinnati, like places that don't have the cost of running a business is nowhere near San Francisco, yet the prices are very similar on menus. And I'm like, San Francisco's a deal, like, honestly, in a lot of ways. Or cocktails, don't get me into cocktails, but you go to LA and every cocktail is $20, just like, period. End of story. There's no negotiation.
Same thing, yeah, with New York. San Francisco, and for whatever reason, has always been the most affordable cocktails.
Yeah, affordable cocktails. And honestly, we have our values, the collective dining community. And I think if you asked a large portion of people here what their values are, they're like sustainable and local and treat our employees well and high minimum wage and good ingredients and yada, yada. But like, paying for that is not something we want to do. And I think that's where the rub is right now also, like, into price. Like Craig was telling me at Delphina, he was just like, it kills me to put a $45, $42 plate of lamb on the menu. He's like, people like are cringing. And he's like, I'm cringing. He's like, I think it's expensive.
And that's underpriced.
Yes. And yet, so we want all these things as diners, as our San Francisco community that's very righteous and sort of patting ourselves on the back all the time for being so great. And I mean, it's true. Let's face facts. It's true. We have a very preconceived notion of the city being a very good dining town, which it has been for many years, off and on. Like, I've been covering it for 25 at least. And I've watched it ebb and flow, but as a whole, we are a very good dining city, and we have very high standards. But the high standards we want, I don't know if we're willing to pay for anymore, because they've gotten very, very expensive. But if you travel, I guess my point is that it's actually not that expensive here to dine out. If you compare it to other cities where it doesn't cost the half of what it does to run a restaurant here. Why? Tell me why. That's my question. That would have been my article, so now you can just write it for me, please.
I look at our prices as, I don't think we're an affordable restaurant anymore. I really do. Like, personally, I want to under promise and over deliver. You know, service wise, food wise. That's how we define our restaurant.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of keeping those costs down,
Yeah.
you know, and saying, but it's just impossible.
Yeah.
It really is. And so, you know, a pork chop, which was $19 in 2006. 2006 is a long time ago. And a lot of stuff has changed. I got to remember that. But you know, we're hovering around $39, you know, that's
Yeah.
a big increase.
And then I think what you were bringing up, Ryan, is like there's this, and this is Corey Lee from Benu also said this. He's like, there's like a blurring of fine dining and mid-level now. He's like, it's all kind of like a mushy amalgamation of the same. Like, so a $42 pork chop at Nopa is not probably all that different than what maybe 7 Adams. Like, it's very close.
Well, it's the same ingredients.
We're all buying from the same people.
Right.
Right. There's no, it's not like he has some special thing that we don't know about or have access to.
Except for that special thing that I
Yeah, like his magical, like cheaper pig that he got.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Magic
but I
pigs.
mean, the efficiency is buying a whole animal,
Yeah.
right? So he does have efficiencies that we can't have
the
because
labor, does that pencil out? Wasn't the labor breaking it down?
Well, I'm free.
yes,
So I'm doing it.
He's
today,
nonprofit,
and I did it
remember?
last week. Yeah. So that's
it is. I mean, that's the number one expense. Everybody asked me. I had a conversation at dinner the other night. We went to Yellowmoto the night before they closed.
Bummer.
And one of the people at the table, they are not in restaurants. None of these people are. And they're just like, "Isn't your rent your issue?" I was like, "Whoever tells you rent is the issue doesn't know what they're talking about."
Yeah.
Like, you could sign a bad lease. Don't get me wrong. Like, that is absolutely possible. Your issue is labor. We all know this is the issue.
Labor's everything.
Yeah. So explain labor a little more.
Okay, so
Like, break it down.
consider yourself going to a Cincinnati or a New York or anywhere else, and you think that like tip credit exists in the rest of the world, but not in California.
Explain
right?
tip credit to people, please.
So you see us paying $18.67 for a server. That's minimum wage across the board for any employee. Your dishwasher could get that. Well, they also get their tips.
Yeah.
If you go to the East Coast, you're going to pay $6 or $7, and the tips count towards applying to the minimum wage.
Right.
So the business actually gets a huge savings because this other income coming in helps bring up the amount they earn to exceed minimum wage. California doesn't believe in that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I think
Jerry
only
Brown
two
lost.
or three states in the country don't.
Yeah, it
believe
might
it.
be
Right.
like 6 or something. It might have gone up,
We're
but there's
definitely
very
the
few,
minority, yeah.
and it's crippling.
Yeah.
It's crippling to know that, and it's not only crippling just from business, right? Like the fact that we're trying to scrounge to get our bottom line, but it's crippling when you talk about fair and equal pay for all, right? Because you can't fair and equal pay the kitchen to the front of house because there's an expectation the front of house is getting tips, right? So you could take that tip and divide it amongst the kitchen. A lot of restaurants do,
Which is
because
what we do.
Finally, that rule has changed
Yeah.
years ago, like
And
5
it's
years
and
ago.
it's a game changer.
But do you give a portion of the tips to the kitchen? You're not giving equal amount to the kitchen, right?
We're getting close. Right after the pandemic, we had the opportunity to toggle and
Reset.
see would servers come back to us if we took a large portion of their earnings. At one point, and correct me if I'm wrong, 20% of the people working there were getting 80% of the take.
Yes. Which is still mostly the case everywhere.
Not fair. Not
Yeah.
fair at all. And being a cook being in this for 40 plus years, I never ever made the money of a busser as a cook.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
But it's a conundrum, right? Because you have a choice as a restaurateur, right? Take this money, right, and pool it to the kitchen and give them, and make everybody, make a cook make the same as a server, right?
Yeah.
You could do that. You are going to have a great food product and the worst service experience ever, because you are going to get not.
Because people will go elsewhere.
When you can make
servers would-
double to triple the money down the street,
Yeah.
the servers are going to go somewhere else,
Yeah.
and you're going to be left with the people who didn't do that, and you're going to end up sacrificing somewhere, because at the end of the day, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Right? There's only X amount of dollars that come in to pay for labor. So what's your choice? Do you want higher quality kitchen food? Do you want higher quality guest service experience?
Yeah.
And then the argument to that is it's really hard to get another cook. It's really hard to replace a cook.
Yeah.
The training and the intricacies and the nonverbal communication and the, just being there every single day and doing it. After a couple of years, you have a very valuable employee. Compared to a server who, being from the kitchen side of things, I still respect the server.
That's right. You guys are totally, you never worked in the kitchen, did you?
I did. That's how I started.
Oh, you did?
And I realized I was never going to be good enough to keep doing that, and then shifted to the front of house.
And I'm not good enough to keep doing it, but I'm doing it. But my point was, especially post-pandemic, cooks were very hard to find, really, really hard to find. So that toggle was very beneficial to our food program, which needed the consistency. But we do. We have younger servers, less experienced servers, and we spend a lot more time training them.
And I will tell you, it's a fight I have with my wife all the time, because I think there's two mindsets of people in, maybe it's San Francisco, maybe it's everywhere, that are, would you go back to a restaurant where the food was amazing and your server was horrific?
Yeah.
And she would say yes.
I am actually. I have so many essays
And
that
I
have not
am
written,
the opposite. I'm the opposite. I don't care if the food's just okay. If my server and my experience was great, I would absolutely give him more time and keep coming back to support to see if the food quality was good enough. Because honestly, sometimes I'm okay with good enough right now. That's what I got to work with.
We just did our best meals of the year. Lauren and I parsed it out, and I did 10 and she did 10. And by the way, we have some questions coming in finally. Yes. And we did meals because, one, I'm very of the opinion, even though it's not going to be as popular if we say best restaurants, but like a meal, you define if you think a restaurant is good based on that meal you had, and that meal is a singular experience because restaurants are hardly static, like a movie or something else you might criticize or critique. So you have your companion, which direction you're sitting, the temperature in the room, the vibe, all these things.
Did you find parking?
Yes, did you find parking? How are you showing up to that dinner?
Right.
Yes.
My manager training just taught me about showing up. And then you have the cooks and the staff. Like, are they in a good mood? Do they have a good day? Is someone out sick? Is someone just yell at their wife? Whatever. So many things that are about humans and fallibility and the day. And it has to all come together in one perfect moment. So the restaurant could be great the next night, and you wouldn't have been there to catch it that day. So we did our best meals. And in doing best meals, I was like kind of taken by how often both Lauren and I talked about our experience with the staff. Like, I went to Original Joe's. I went to Little Original Joe's, and I was like, I'll be honest, I was like, I'm not going to fucking like this place. It's like too basic. Like, I'm too cool for this. But I loved Little Original Joe's because they were so nice, and it was the service was so on point, and the space had so much energy because everyone else was feeling that same thing. And I don't even know what I ate. Like, I had the zucchini fries, and they were fun, and I had a martini, and that was great. But beyond that, I just remember the service.
But you go back,
and I would go back, and so I couldn't tell you what pasta I had.
What would you do? It's interesting because he's a different perspective.
I'm so impressed with that family.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed with that family.
They have generational hospitality. I think it is in their DNA. Like, after interviewing them for hours and hours and hours, because let me tell you, they are like CIA. Like, they do not reveal anything other than the most polished, perfect. I'm like, do you guys get in a fight, your brother, sister? You've been working together so long? And they're like, no, we love each other. I'm like, oh, come on. Come on. Let me hear the real story. But they are such pros.
They're so smart.
They're such pros.
And as we sort of lament, there's another side to this is the booze.
Yeah.
Where people, we've seen it in our restaurant. It's just not popular to drink. If somebody says, this is toxic, do you want a double? Can I get you another glass of poison? If you go into Original Joe's or Elena's or any of them, there's a martini on every table. Yeah. There's a bottle of wine everywhere.
I asked them if their sales had gone down. Not at all. Because it's built into their culture.
And what they're doing out of, I think it's 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
Your size restaurant.
They have 100. Well, I'm talking Little Original Joe's, the one in the marina. Are we talking about the
same? You're talking about the new one, which is big.
It's 100 seats. The one in the marina.
You're talking.
They have a takeout one that's
in West Portal.
Yeah, that's West Portal.
River on the Street that's $7.5 million a year.
Well, they have Elena's.
Space.
Like,
it's brilliant.
They're just but it is not a fluke. Like after speaking to them, they are very studied. They come to the table with generations of learning
And they
how
take care of
to
the
create
people.
this culture. They have
They take care of
generations of
investors.
people who have been coming.
Yeah.
It'd be as if Nopa keeps going for, your children's and children's children do it. I think Nopa
But
will do that.
but for Original Joe's, not that they're not great, because I also quite enjoy going there, right? I actually order that on to go for at home a decent amount, because it's comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Sales cures all problems.
Yeah.
So when you have the sales and you have generations of people going there and supporting it, and they're able to uphold it, they can treat their employees better. They can maintain their space better. They can keep their food quality the same. And it just makes your ability to make those decisions less stressful and easier to just do the right thing. When you're backed into a corner, which is what most restaurant operators are nowadays, you have to cut on maintaining your space. You have to understaff, and that stresses everybody out.
Yeah.
Like you're cutting somewhere to try to make ends meet, and that puts you in a position to make a bad decision. And I think the guest realizes it. They're like, I don't want to go back there when I can go to Little Original Joe's.
Yeah.
Right?
We have some questions, and we have 20 minutes, so I want to parse some of these out. Someone asked, this is a good, just sort of like fun question so we can get off the like nitty gritty business stuff. Based on current dining trends, this is from Anonymous, what do the next 5 years in San Francisco look like when it comes to the restaurant landscape? And I think that's interesting because it's what we're talking about. Like what's happening right now? Will there be more mid-level, or will people will that actually, I can't even talk about it because it made me so sad if that's actually what you would think, that it's not going to continue. But yeah, I'm curious what you both think. Like what does 5 years from now look like?
Well, if we were to go backwards 5 years and try and predict,
Yeah.
we would be very off, right?
Yeah, you'd be like, let me see.
Let me
there's gonna be a
see
global
what's going to happen
pandemic,
in 5
and-
years. So I'm very
Well, let's say
lax to do
there's
that.
no global pandemic.
Oh,
there's
okay.
like just
Factor that
if we
out.
just keep on keeping on some relatively normal level. What is the?
I think it depends on so many things. I think tech is a big question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to start? I think our techies are very nervous right now.
Yeah.
Do they have a job or not?
So I wrote a story a zillion years ago, and actually it's really relevant to this because it was predicting the future. I sat next to an investor. So I'm a partner in Tacolicious. My ex-husband and Joe and I started it together essentially, and I worked there for 7 years, and I learned a hell of a lot. Like basically, I am a much more empathetic person and food writer than
Everybody
I ever would
should
have
work in a
been. Like
restaurant.
you do not know
Yeah.
until your skin is in the game, and it is bananas. So kudos to anyone that opens a restaurant. But one of our investors sat next to me one night and he was like, hey, guess what? Your restaurant that you think is popular, all these restaurants in San Francisco, and this is the 2000s, early 2000s. He was like, no, they're tech. Tech supports restaurants. The money from tech is supporting the industry. So you think this industry is like all great. He's like, take tech away, which everyone's bitching about. There is no restaurant because they are the investors. They are your diners. And he's like, they're the patrons of the arts, and the arts in San Francisco is food, is dining, it is restaurants. That is one of our pillars. We have tech, we have food. These are the pillars, the value system of San Francisco. And I thought that was really interesting because I'd sort of self-centeredly never thought about that. I was like, no, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Like literally, I think Tacolicious is like 60 investors, and majority come from the tech world. Mm-hmm. So if the tech world is not prosperous, it will affect restaurants in ways that I don't think people see that direct connection.
And we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't.
True.
AI is coming up.
But again, it's I guess you could say somebody's misfortune, somebody else's fortune. For all the tech companies that might be challenged right now, there's an entire new series of tech companies that are thriving. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, again, the people can hate on tech, they can do whatever they want to do. You find a lot of people that hate on it are not a part of it, and they're not receiving those benefits that the people who work in that industry are. I mean, we make choices not to work in that industry, but you could work at Facebook's Kitchen and be a cook working for tech, right?
Well, tech also took a lot of people out of our business.
They did.
A lot.
That was what, 5-6 years pre-COVID, about 2 years pre-COVID, we lost a huge amount of qualified cooks.
So to your point,
You
you know,
can
there's a
blame Fidel.
benefit to it as well. The other
Yeah.
side, because we're starting to see people come back into
back.
into
But I
the
wouldn't be
fold.
surprised. What's old is new. That's always what
So
happens,
you
right?
think 5 years from now we're going to have a lot of 2000s restaurants?
I think we're going to start to see the new generation. You're already starting to see the generational shift, right? Like, of who's doing things right. Right now, fine dining, go into that prefix, easiest entry point. I see the city as making efforts to make things easier and better. That doesn't mean it's happened yet.
I was like,
It has, but I mean,
Taking away some fees.
I think my thing is be
Right.
objective, right? Like
Yeah.
the voters have, right? Prop M, right? That is not going to change my business, but it's definitely not going to hurt me. It's going to only help, even if it's a little
you want to
bit.
explain Prop M just for a hot second?
Prop M basically relieves all small business of 49 different fees, which mostly are your registration, your health permits, your fire assembly, place of assemblies, 6 to 8K max.
Yeah.
Right.
Still got a candle tax.
No, that's
Oh,
that's
that's
out.
gone?
Yep. Candles is one of the included taxes that you don't have to pay for anymore. One of the fees.
Crazy.
Yep, the candle permit is on there.
Craziest
But you save a lot. It's the effort, right? It's recognizing there's a problem, and the city is making efforts, right? And that doesn't mean they can fix it,
Yeah.
but they see it,
So-
the problem. So I think it will get slightly.
Maybe a little better. I mean,
maybe.
so we wrote for this new package that I don't know what to call it anymore. I used to work at magazines. We call them packages. But like for the 8 articles we dropped on Monday, all about the state of dining in San Francisco, we talked about different things that have occurred due to economic reasons. One was my story about fine dining and mid-level and maybe this sort of connection. Another one is about small restaurants, like restaurants, there's the footprint of restaurants. Like it is more economical to have a small space and for many reasons. And it creates, from the diner's perspective, energy. Like, you know, Four Kings is a great example. Tiny, boisterous.
People like people.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. That restaurant made me feel like I was in Brooklyn. Like whether or not I loved the food was really not a point. It was like I loved being there. I felt cool by default. And I think that is something we'll probably see more of. And then also Laurence Jossel, who works with me, she edited a story on hoodless kitchens. And that was just about something people don't think about. Like if you can go into a retail space that doesn't have a hood, you're saving a lot of money because a space that's built out as a restaurant is going to be more expensive, or a space that's built out, or if you're installing a hood, you know, God be with you, very expensive. So if you can go into a retail space and have, like Anchovy Bar did, or like, I'm trying to think of the other restaurants, I can't think off the top of my head, but that's a really interesting proposition that you could run a restaurant with basically a glorified toaster oven and a hot plate, and you can make some interesting food. So that's happening. So I think maybe the creativity that I've seen has really, I think, you know, when the 2009, that's how Tacolicious, it began. Like out of like change
Necessity.
or die.
I remember that.
It was a change or die concept.
And that was a
basically,
great movement.
Yeah, Joe had Loyola and it was bailing.
That was
and
16th and
it was-
Mission?
No, that was
no,
in the
Chestnut.
Marina.
Oh, Marina, Chestnut.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was sort of
yeah,
the original
yeah.
chocolate. And it was purely like,
Survival.
there was no choice.
Yeah.
Like we had started a little silly taco stand with his dumb name, and we were like, all right. And Joe's like, let's just make this whole 3 tacos into a whole concept, and he came up with that idea. So I do think creativity comes when people are forced, you know, have a hard time. Like the fact that Nopa is making pastries and selling them is probably not because you were just like, hey, let's just add a little bit more work, but because it's a little added source of revenue, but it's cool that you're doing it. So from a diner's perspective, I think there's a lot to reap from
But it's also testing the waters to see if that is a thing, because we're coming up on a year of hustle.
Yeah.
And this is the hustle of what else can you do to drive sales if at 9:30 there are crickets on the street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. And so it's to the diner's benefit. I don't think it's to I mean, restaurants are scrambling. It's hard. But from the diner's perspective, there's some really fun things that have come out of it. Lori Thomas wrote in from GGRA, and she said, isn't there a percentage per the law that can only be paid FOH, front of house, back of house, in tip pools? Heard it was 80-20.
La 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 la.
I don't know the answer to that.
It doesn't affect me.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next question. Someone asked, I think is interesting, is because I've heard a lot of this. There's, you know, like go go to the Burbs or go to Burlingame and go to Palo Alto. I mean, we've seen
We're doing
Cape
it.
Pico.
We're opening tomorrow in Walnut Creek.
What are you opening tomorrow? Oh my God! Don't
We haven't
tell
told
anyone I didn't
anybody.
know. Wait, what? This is breaking news. We have like a little flashy sign that we can put up, like little lights. And can you make a noise?
Yeah,
like
we're testing the footprint. That's where I'm headed
Wait,
next.
what?
Yeah.
What are you opening?
We partnered with Bounty Hunter.
And
So we're taking over
You mean
and
from Napa Bounty
Yep.
Hunter?
And so
Oh,
we're
shit.
reconcepting their space into a wood-fired grill.
Tomorrow?
Tonight is our friends and family. I'm
my
going
God.
to head out there
That's
right
a
after this.
crazy
And
present.
I'm
tomorrow night is our first night.
Lauren, sorry, watching this right now because she's going to be
No,
like, Sarah finally got
there
us
might be an email in your inbox at this point. I don't know. There's some we were going to say
okay.
something today, but
There you go. Well, Walnut Creek is the place to be. I mean,
I don't even
Original
understand.
Joe's
Walnut Creek
opening.
is. I was talking about. He worked in Lafayette back in the day. It's insane. Original Joe's, Pinstripes, Model Bakery, Teleferique,
Yeah.
Pacific. They're all.
Yeah.
Everything is there.
Yeah, it's a wealthy community, and it
And they eat
is
out,
drawing people there. And Burlingame has had Pizzeria Delfina.
Menlo
I mean,
Park.
Tacolicious opened in Palo Alto, but I will say, it's a sleepy proposition. Like people do not. There is a big meal break. Let's just put it this: there's lunch, and then there's nothing, and then there's dinner, and then there's nothing. Like it's different. It's
different.
it's the Burbs, but there is. I've heard multiple chefs, whether or not they're actually opening, like you are, and I didn't know this, and now I'm like slightly annoyed, but trying to be like, whatever, it's
Nobody
totally
knew.
fine.
Nobody knew. So you're actually the first to technically probably know.
You guys are the first to know. All right, well, so the Burbs, I think that's a really, Jessica just said, press release went out this morning.
There you go.
But I do think that there is some sort of want. You know, it's interesting, Laurence, you're also working on a counter concept for the Ferry Building.
Definitely. And that, if that is good
Yeah.
and it feels right, that would be the next
You're going to
move.
open in Walnut Creek. I know.
I-
I know what's next. I can see the
Burlingame,
path.
man, Burlingame
Now I see
is
the
like-
5 years. It's like, first you start with Nopa, then you do counter service, and then you move to Walnut Creek.
But that's smart business. And I think that is a business model, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to think about how do you expand your business. Your reputation and definition of what you spent 19 years doing to go into the arguably probably right now the busiest foot traffic location in all of San Francisco, the Ferry Building,
Yeah.
immediately gives you a leg up. Plus your namesake, it's a smart business move to set yourself up for success.
I am so excited about this.
Tell us a little bit more about it. We have, by the way, 8 minutes, and I have like a wrap-up question that's going to be like a Spotify playlist wrap-up, but like not.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be like food, but Spotify.
All right. Just super fast, we're opening a place called Nopa Fish.
Yeah.
And the idea is this cross-branding, of course, and to your point, a hugely busy spot with locals and tourists, and 25,000 people there on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. I've always looked at that building as very iconic. I'm there every Tuesday morning, every Thursday morning, every Saturday morning shopping, and I've been in love with that building for a long time. So I'm very honored to be
When is it
connected.
supposed to open?
I think it's probably March, April of
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
My wife's doing all the design right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's looking great. And now I just have to do the silly food part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I do
Coming
think I
along.
was talking to Night Yun. I went out with her the other night, and
My neighbor.
on another story that I was working on about reservation-less dining, and I went to Liho because like Ravi had been like, we used to have all these walk-ins, we don't walk-ins anymore. I'm like, let's go on a Friday night at 6:30. They were like, it'll be an hour and a half wait. I was like, okay, this is not a good idea. But she was talking about how well Lunette's doing as a counter service. She's like, I don't think I could do a non-counter service. She's like, I think I'm going to take like I don't know, I might like be able to take a drawing class or basically have my life back after having Mumbai, which was full service.
She's there every moment.
Yeah.
Although
Although
hard.
she's like, they don't even need me at Lunette anymore.
They need her. I mean, she's standing there every moment.
Yeah.
just quality control and doing the thing
Yeah.
and working hard.
She's great. By
I'm
the way,
excited
if
to get
you've
to know her.
seen her Chef's Table series on noodle, well, they did a whole series on noodles, and they did one on night. Oh my God, I cried. She's
Very heart forward.
It's just her story is great, and I guess her mom's like flipping burgers right now in Willits, which I also just love that story. That's another. I have so many stories. I shouldn't be telling you guys all my stories. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions. We have 5 minutes.
I think we just keep going.
Yeah, we could.
I'm not opening a restaurant tonight.
Talk about this.
I can
He's no
I can be
trap
here all
to
day.
Yeah, you're not opening a secret restaurant. tonight in Walnut Creek. What should young chefs and entrepreneurs target if they're opening a new restaurant in terms of price points attracting diners? That's a very general question.
That's a good question.
What should young chefs and entrepreneurs target if they are opening a new restaurant in terms of price points and attracting diners? You want to take it?
It depends on so many things.
Yeah, that's why I was
It does,
say
but I think it's a
broad.
philosophy, right? Like, and I think you and I probably share the same philosophy on that. Is I would rather take lower margins and have a packed restaurant with a wait list than go the opposite route, raise my prices, and say I only need to do 30 people today, because I think it changes the dynamic, like you were talking about your experience at Original Joe's or Four Kings.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
energy.
you don't get 20 years of sustainability in San Francisco in a restaurant unless you have volume.
Yeah.
And I don't think people, younger chefs, and I think this is how you get into these high-end prefixes that you're talking about, these $200, $300 menus, because they're like, oh, I need to do 20 covers to make my numbers work. But at the end of the day, they aren't even doing 20 covers.
Well, I mean, John from Kiln was really great. What a nice guy. But he was like, he's got a 20-course tasting menu. That is it. That is your choice. You go, you eat that.
Yep.
And he's just like, yeah, cool, except if someone doesn't show up. You know, like if we don't fill it, it is like a tragedy. Like it is not casual.
But I told you that it's not your base
There's no
number of
room
covers,
for
right?
error.
It's your 5 PMs and your 9 PMs that actually make you the money on the bottom line.
Yeah.
Everything else is just covering your costs. So if you lose a table, you're screwed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I would argue to that person, I'd be picking something where I think I have a chance to achieve volume based on the location I've chosen, and what your target market is, because you need to hit the volume to have long-term sustainability. And if you don't have, what do you think? If you don't have at least 5 years within your restaurant, you have the first 2 years are probably going to pay back your restaurant if you are really doing well,
Yeah.
right? And then the next 2 years are going to start to pay you back for your lost time and sanity, right? And so it's really the next 7 years that you need to actually make that worth your time.
So you're basically saying just don't do it.
I'm saying open Nopa.
Right.
Open Nopa. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left, and I'm going to do my little rapid fire. I'm pretending I'm Ezra Klein right now. Oh my God, I love Ezra Klein so much. By the way, can we get Ezra Klein on here, and I'll just do like some weird food / politics interview just to chat with Ezra Klein. Okay, so rapid fire. So tell me the best meal that you've had in recent past. Like, what was the last best meal you had, rather than like this year? That's too broad. And then, if Spotify playlist, like the best hits that you've listened to all year, is a condiment that you've used the most this year, what is it? Those are my questions for you. So best meal, most memorable meal, most recent memorable meal, and the condiment that you've turned to the most this year.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay,
You go first.
Okay, it's not a restaurant.
Oh shit!
I
Come
know.
on.
I'm sorry, but this is really important.
Is that on your farm?
I
Oh, he has
turned-
a farm,
I
by the way,
turned-
you guys. He has a farm.
I turned 55 in this past
Nice.
September.
Congratulations.
And I said to my wife, all I want to do is just, we got this little place in Sebastopol, this little getaway where we're trying to grow food for the restaurant. I say trying, it's really fun, but hard. And I said, I just want to go there. And you know what I'm going to do today? At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to take a nap. I haven't taken a nap in since I had a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and our kid is 19, and 15 and 16. So I took a nap, and my wife was absolutely, which is also really, really unusual. But it was my birthday, so I could do it. Fell asleep, and I woke up to the smell of something delicious, and I got up in my groggy state, and I walked into the kitchen. George Dingle and his beautiful wife, Anissa, who are opening a restaurant called Dingle's, by the way, soon.
I'm gonna write on.
Yeah.
Hayes Valley.
Yeah, in Hayes Valley. It's going to be pretty cool. A gastropub. He was in an apron. She was in an apron, and they were making dinner for me and 12 invited guests.
Oh my God! So your wife organized this?
Yes, she organized it,
It's a
and it was
surprise
incredible
dinner.
food.
That's so nice. Okay, that
Very
counts.
honored. It was great.
Wait, what was the main course?
The main course, he did beef, and it was, popovers and very English. It was
that sounds so
delightful.
good.
But the best condiment is something I've just eaten recently that I didn't know much about. It's called lemon pickle.
Like a mango, like a
It's like
Indian
an
pickle?
Indian, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to start making them with Meyer lemons, and this is going to be sort of the idea, but delicious.
Delicious. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan. I love a Indian salty, spicy as hell little pickle that
Love
you
it.
get like this much and makes the whole meal.
This is hard for me. I
Sorry.
unfortunately, I don't have a 19-year-old. I have a 3 that just turned 4-year-old. So my options of going out to
Cheerios.
dinner are, I will tell you, the most frequented restaurant I've been to is Limon, because my daughter loves it. It's one of the few restaurants she's so well behaved at. And we know chicken's coming out. We're getting some empanadas, right? Like, I know exactly what she'll eat over there. So that, I made Dave, our chef at Seven Adams, he cooked me a rib roast for Thanksgiving, so I didn't have to, and that was
Nice.
phenomenal.
Better than turkey.
Yes. Best condiments. I'm not a condiment person.
Wow.
I'm weird. So, I mean, I know chili
comment.
crunch and soy sauce and hot mustard, and we eat a
Yeah.
lot of dumplings and dim sum, because that's another thing my daughter will eat.
Yeah.
And so it's always like, make sure your dim sum is on point.
Yeah.
But that's really what I go to. I'm not a comfort person. Like, I'm from Kentucky. I like just consistently comfort. I like to work in a place that's got lots of things going on, but I like simple, consistent, just like a simple grilled piece of fish with some lemon, delicious. Like, I don't need much more than that.
You're like a monk.
I know. I don't like, the
I feel like
more
monks
crazy
eat.
adventurous, the more, like, I don't know, the more you're in this business, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't need to always try something new. I just want
Yeah.
well executed,
Yeah.
simple,
Mhm.
good
Yeah.
food, because that's,
Yeah, I get it.
I don't know.
It's like a palate cleanser of your life, basically.
It
just
is.
to
It's
go
like, I'm
home
not
and
having
just
to
have,
work. I
like-
just Hillstone, I go there all the time. Their
Yeah.
French dip is like,
so many chefs are.
It's
Hillstone
so good.
all the time because it's
I
consistent.
used to work there
And
20
it's
plus
dark.
years ago.
Oh, that's right. You're a Hillstone.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
like-
That's why you're so poised. All right. I think we are at 1:02, so we are done. Thank you to whoever is out there in the world. I appreciate you listening, and please subscribe to The Standard. We just started a paywall, which is driving everyone nuts, but $9 a month is a lot better than a shitty sandwich. Let me tell you.
That's how you put it, yeah.
Okay.